The information provided by Trading Forex Price Action to you does not constitute personal financial advice. The information provided is of a general nature only and does not take into account your individual objectives, financial situation, or needs. It should not be used, relied upon, or treated as a substitute for specific professional advice.
Hey guys, this is a weekly forecast for June 13th through the 17th of 2022. Now just a heads up, I released a price action beginners course about 2 weeks ago. Now if you haven't watched it yet and you're a beginner trader, please do so because it'll provide a solid foundation for the beginner trader so they'll know what to expect in trading and moreover what's expected of them in order to trade effectively. Okay, so let's start with the pound yen.
Okay, this is a monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. So since there was strong long strength confirmed right at this area right here from this trend line breakout, from this pivot to this pivot right here, with that breakout and immediate break back in, confirming normal short strength, however price coming right back up to that pivot high to create strong long strength. And so in the long term, I'm long biased right back up to this pivot high right here. And moreover, since there was a weekly short trade that formed right here, which was weaker than a weekly long trade that formed right here, and so the bias was long, however that main target was hit this week right here. And so in the short term, I'm neutral biased. Okay, let's talk entries. Okay, so on this weekly chart, the last weekly short trade that formed was right here, and the last weekly long trade formed right here. And if you recall, this long trade was stronger than this short trade, so the weekly bias was long, or in other words, price was likely to reach this pivot high before reaching this pivot low. And just this week, that main target was hit right here. So let's go ahead and review what happened with this setup. Let's go over to the 4-hour chart. Okay, so on this 4-hour chart, if you recall, that weekly bias formed roughly in these areas right here. And then immediately we got confirmation of normal short strength from this trend line, from this pivot to this pivot right here. Right at this point right here, creating normal short strength. However, price came right back up to that pivot high right here to create strong long strength, and moreover confirming that weekly bias to be long. However, recall, since this is a mid-row long entry, my stop loss would have been placed at this pivot low right here. And because I did not get a pullback right back down to the 158.66 levels right here to minimize my risk for my stop losses right here, I did not take this long entry. And moreover, price went straight up to its main weekly target and hit that main target at this point right here. Okay, so at the current moment, since that main target was hit right here this week, the weekly bias is back to neutral. So let me go ahead and show you what I'll be looking for in the coming weeks for this pair. So let's go over to the weekly chart. Okay, so on this weekly chart, again, that last long trade that form was right here. And so at this point, I'll be waiting for another weekly or daily short trade to form, so I can measure the strength differential compared to the last weekly long trade right here to come up with a new weekly or daily bias, whether long or short. Okay, and I'll keep you guys updated with this one when a new bias forms. Okay, so let's go on to the dollar CAD. Okay, and if you're having trouble understanding what I'm talking about in terms of weekly biases and lower confirmations, please watch my price action trading course, for that course is designed to provide you the necessary information so you can understand these forecasts. Okay, this is a monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. So since there was a trend line breakout, an immediate break back in from this trend line, from this pivot to this pivot right here, right at this point right here, signaling normal long strength. However, this type of ranging price action often precedes a move right back down to that pivot low where that normal long strength was created to create strong short strength. In the long term, I'm short biased right back down to this pivot low right here. And moreover, on the weekly chart, since there was a strong short trade that formed right here and a weak long trade that formed right here, in the short term, I'm also short biased right back down to this pivot low right here. Okay, let's talk entries. Okay, so on this weekly chart, the last weekly long trade that formed was right here, and the last weekly short trade that formed was right here. Now going strictly from this weekly strength, This short trade is stronger than this long trade, so the weekly bias is short. Or in other words, price is likely to reach this pivot low right here before reaching this pivot high. And so I'm currently watching the lower time frames to confirm this weekly short bias, and moreover possibly to take a short entry with the stop loss at this pivot high right here. So let me go ahead and show you what's going on the lower confirmation. So let's go over to the 4-hour chart. Okay, so on this 4-hour chart, initially there was confirmation of strong short strength. And that's from this trend line, from this pivot to this pivot right here, with a breakout and immediate break back in. However, price coming right back down to that pivot low to make strong short strength. However, I did not get enough of a pullback to entice me to take a short entry at any one of these pullback levels right here. For my stop losses at this pivot high, and ideally I do want about 100 to 200 pip stop loss. So I want to pull back roughly to these levels right here for me to take a short entry. Okay, and then moreover, there was further strong short strength confirmed right here from this trend line, from this pivot to this pivot right here. However, price came right back down to that pivot low, again making strong short strength. And then we got this nice fall all the way down to these levels, close to that weekly bias's target, a little bit lower at these levels right here. Okay, however, that said, we did have strong 4-hour long confirmation just confirmed this week from this trend line, from this pivot to this pivot right here. So there was a breakout, an immediate break back in. However, price came right back up to that pivot high, creating strong long strength. And we did get this nice move all the way up to these levels right here. Okay, so in order for me to take a short entry, roughly at these levels right here, I'm going to need further confirmation of 4-hour strong short strength to confirm that weekly short bias. So let me show you what I'll be looking for in the coming weeks to confirm some 4-hour strong short strength. Let's get rid of these and zoom out. Alright, so a 4-hour price can rise up to those entry levels above, make a lower pivot like this, creating a trend line where I could get some strong short strength, and price coming right back down to that trend line, breaking it out, and immediately breaking back in, creating normal long strength. However, price can come right back to that pivot low. That'll create some strong short strength and further confirm that weekly bias for a short entry. Okay, so we'll just see what happens with this one, and I'll keep you guys updated on the midweek analysis. Alright, so let's go on to the Euro Pound. Okay, this is a monthly chart. We'll start off with an overview. So since this trend line right here, from this pivot to this pivot right here, is a significant trend line, and since price has a tendency to want to test strong levels in the long term, I'm short biased right back down to this diagonal trend line right here. However, on the daily chart, since there was a weak short trade that formed and a strong long trade that formed right here, in the short term I'm long biased right back up to this pivot high right here. Okay, let's talk entries. Okay, this is a weekly chart. Let me run you by what's been happening on this pair for the last couple of months. So back in July of 2021, there was a weak long trade that formed. And then 2 weeks later, there was a strong short trade that formed right here. However, this short trade hit its main target at a monthly gap level that runs right through here. And so at this point, the bias became long. Or in other words, price was likely to reach this pivot high before reaching this pivot low. And that main target was hit right here. And then the following week, there was actually a strong long trade that formed this time, and then a weak short trade that formed. However, this time, this long trade also hit its main target again at this monthly gap level that runs right through these levels. And so the bias became short. Or in other words, price was likely to reach this pivot low before reaching this pivot high. And that main target was hit right here. And then for about a month and a half, price just ranged about. And then at this point right here, there was actually a strong long trade that formed that was stronger than the last short trade right here. And so the bias became long. Or in other words, price was likely to reach this pivot high before reaching this pivot low. However, once again, that monthly gap level became a target for this long entry. And so the bias became short, or in other words, price is likely to reach this pivot low before reaching this pivot high. And then really for the last couple of months, there were no weekly trades that formed on this weekly chart. However, on the daily chart, there was a bias that formed with a short trade at this pivot and a long trade at this pivot. So let me go ahead and explain that daily bias to you guys. Let's go over to the daily chart. All right, so on this daily chart, the last daily short trade that formed was right here, while the last daily long trade that formed was right here. Now let's go ahead and see what is providing short strength for this short trade and long strength for this long trade. So let's go over to the monthly chart. Okay, so on this monthly chart, that daily short trade formed in this area, while that long trade formed roughly in these areas right here. Now, what's providing short strength for that daily short trade is, first of all, we have this small gap right here, providing short strength. And moreover, we have this legitimate trend line right here from this pivot to this pivot. And you want to remember it's legitimate because it has more than 3 touches, 1, 2, and 3. Now, in terms of long strength for that daily long trade, all there really is this miniature gap right here providing long strength. So going strictly from these elements, there seems to be more short strength than long strength. However, there are some other elements that I'm adding to this mix. Go ahead and zoom out right here. Okay, so first of all, try drawing this trend line from this pivot to this pivot right here. Now, typically, this is a trend line that could possibly create strong short strength with a monthly breakout and immediate break back in. However, price coming right back down to that pivot low to make strong short strength. However, as you can see, price first of all did not break out of this trend line, and moreover, it made multiple rejection candles. So a rejection candle is when there's a long wick on the side that price is rejecting. Now, these rejection candles itself provide long strength. It must be added to that daily biases mix. And moreover, there was weekly normal long strength confirmed right at this pivot right here with a breakout and immediate break back in. So adding these two elements to that daily biases mix, in my opinion, there's slightly more long strength than short strength for that daily setup. However, that said, the lower time frames always have the ultimate say in terms of biases. So let's go see what's happening over there. Let's go over to the 4-hour chart. Okay, so on this 4-hour chart, that daily bias formed roughly in these areas right here. Now, the initial confirmation we got was of strong long strength from this pivot to this pivot right here. As you can see, there's a breakout, immediate break back in. And right away, price came right back up to that pivot high to create strong long strength. And thus, at this point, initially confirming a daily long bias. However, about a week ago, strong short strength was actually confirmed from this trend line, from this pivot to this pivot right here. With this breakout and immediate break back in, showing normal long strength. However, price coming right back down to stop out that pivot low, creating strong short strength. Okay, so at this moment, that daily bias is confirmed on the lower time frames to be short biased. So I'm going to need some strong long confirmation to enter a long trade. So here's some trend lines I'm looking at. Now that's this trend line from this pivot to this pivot right here. Now, the price could come down to this trend line, break it out, and immediately break back in, creating normal long strength. However, price coming right back down to make strong short strength, and simultaneously getting a legitimate V-shaped recovery on the lower time frames. For example, on the 1 minute to 15 minute chart, that will show extreme long strength. And at that point, I will enter a long entry. Again, with the stop loss at this pivot low, where that daily biases long trade is, and the main target at this pivot high right here. Okay, so we're going to have to see what happens with this one, and I'll keep you guys updated on the midweek analysis also.
Okay, so that's it for the weekly forecast. Now, as you guys know, every once in a while I explain what's been happening to a currency pair for the last year or so. Now, I do this because it's important to know what a currency pair has been doing in the past in order to know in detail what it's doing now. Just like if you're watching a movie and if you started watching it from the halfway point, you wouldn't really know in detail what's happening right now, right? Okay, so it's the same in trading. So if you understand the story of a currency pair for the last year or so, it's going to give you a sense of unison with that currency pair, which is going to further allow you to know the slight changes in trends way before it happens. And that's going to allow you to stay one step ahead of the market at all times. Okay, so if you have time, please refer to earlier forecasts to understand the story of each currency pair. Okay, so I hope you guys have a great week, and thanks for watching, guys. Okay, bye.